Hello and welcome everyone to today's episode. Today we're going to talk about a wonderful book called Bhujia Barons. So what is this book about? Who has written this book? Why should you read this book? What will you learn from this book? There might be several questions and I'm going to try and answer each of these questions in further depth for you. But first things first, let's get started by understanding more about what is this book all about. So Bhujia Barons is the name of the book, the title of the book, and it is written by Pavitra Kumar, who is the author. So let's get to know something more about the author before we talk about the book. So Ms. Pavitra Kumar has a degree in journalism from the Delhi University. She also has done her MBA from Carlson Institute of Management. Apart from this, she has in-depth knowledge and experience in the domain of marketing. And she's passionate about both learning about businesses and writing about businesses. Okay, so you certainly have someone who has a lot of in-depth knowledge about business and business acumen and businessmen in general. So that's really fantastic. I think a lot of times we tend to credit the book, but not the author. So it's important to know the person behind the book who has given us so much of knowledge to look forward to. So that's Pavitra Kumar for you, the creator of this book. Now, having spoken about the author, let's understand a few more details around the book, because many a times when you pick up a book, you look at the size of the book and decide whether it's worth reading or not. If it's too fat for you, then you might not pick up. So this book originally created in the year 2016 is of the non-fiction genre. Non-fiction generally includes everything which is real. Okay, so it's nothing about fictitious characters here. Whatever you'll read in this book is about real characters, real places, everything is real. So it's in the non-fiction business category. It's about 219 pages. So not really a very thick book to read, in case that is something that really matters to you before you pick up a book. And this book basically talks about the Haldiram business in India. The Haldirams have a huge reputation in India and of course globally as of today. And this book talks about the Haldiram business in greater depth, everything that you need to know about this business, especially if you're fascinated by the Haldiram range of products. And Penguin Random House India Private Limited were the publishers of this book. So that's in a nutshell about what this book originally contains. Now, the Haldiram, as I said, is an iconic Indian brand, but it's a global name today. And they have a product portfolio to envy. Okay, they manufacture and sell everything from namkeens and sweets and whatnot. So this book originally is called Bhujia Barons for a reason, because the product that we're going to talk about is Bhujia. Now, what is Bhujia? Bhujia is an Indian snack which you can have in your breakfast. You can eat it along with your tea. Basically, you can eat it any time during the day, whenever you're hungry. It's a snack which is very, very popular for that sense. And it comes from the Western territory of India, but it's enjoyed and cherished across India now, thanks to the Haldirams, because of which it became and gained a lot in popularity. So that's what the product is, the Bhujia, and the people who made the Bhujia popular, and that's why the name of the book, Bhujia Barons. Okay, so let's get to understand where did it all start? What was the story? Okay, so the gentleman that you see on your screen is the founder of this business. His name was Shri Ganga Bhishan Agarwal, and popularly also called as Haldiram. And that's how the name Haldirams came into existence. Now, this business started way back in 1937, at a time when India was not really an independent country. And during those days, it was even more tough to start a business like this. But thanks to the gentleman that you see here, who had the vision, the foresight, and the passion to start a business in one of the remote locations in India, Bikaner, of course, now a far bigger city than it was originally, but it all started in Bikaner, which is a city in the state of Rajasthan in India. Today, of course, Haldirams has pan-India presence, and they have a global presence as well. So more than 80 odd countries where they're present today, their products are being sold. And not just Indians, even foreigners tend to enjoy the products that Haldirams manufactures and sells. And therefore, today it's a huge business. It's $1 billion business, or even more than that. In fact, when this book was written, it was subtitled How They Grew from Nothing to 5,000 crore. But of course, they have exceeded that figure, much, much bigger now in terms of size, scope, and scale. So the business is much bigger as of today, as we are talking. So let's get to understand, what do we really see in this book? So this book essentially talks about the Agarwals, the people behind the Haldiram's business. That's the family that started this business. And thanks to Ganga Bhushan Agarwal, who was the one who started this business. He learned the art of bhujia making in the family, and he was hardly 11 or 12 years of age when he caught the fascination of making bhujias. It was a time when bhujia was a commoditized product, not really a very, very popular product. I mean, people used to pay a very small sum of money to buy bhujia. It was not something which people really cherished, but he converted that commoditized product into a popular product because he learned the art of bhujia making. And sooner than later, people loved what he did. And the rest, as they say, is history. And as of today, if you look at the territorial division of the business, the Haldiram's business is scattered across cities. What originally started in Bikaner is also now present across cities like Nagpur, Kolkata, and even Delhi. And there are, of course, a lot of franchisees coming up. So there is a possibility that you might see the Haldiram's business in your city or in your town too. So what you see on screen is the territorial division. Why did this territorial division happen? Some of it happened through a gradual process. Some of it happened because of the fractions within the family. So we're going to talk about that as well in greater depth as we progress. But this is how the business looks as of today. It's scattered, it's got pan-India presence. And as I said, it is an iconic Indian brand. And it's run by different brothers in the Agarwal family, each one of whom heads the city-wise location. So one brother would look at Delhi, one would look at Nagpur, Kolkata, Bikaner, and so on and so forth. Right. So what do we take from this book? The book is fascinating, especially because it is written in a very, very simplistic fashion. So anyone can pick up this book. Even if you do not understand much about business, you can still start reading this book and gain a lot of insights about the Haldiram's business. But what differentiates this book is the kind of lessons that it gives us about the bhujia business, because the bhujia business is something that nobody would expect to grow in size and stature as the way Haldiram's did. Because as I said, there are many bhujia manufacturers. I mean, you get a lot of them even on any common street in any city. But what makes Haldiram special is that they took a commoditized product and branded it and sold it in a fashion which made it into the popular product. But it's not just about that. It's also about the fact that Haldiram himself, as an individual, believed in the fact that quality is a key differentiator. Nothing can ever replace or substitute quality product. And you see that credo being lived up to even today in any Haldiram product that you buy from anywhere for that matter. And it is this credo that quality is something which cannot be substituted is what kept the business growing over a period of time. And the sales kept on growing, not just by 50 or 100%, but multiple times over. And one of the reasons that happened is because quality was always an important factor. Another important thing that you look at in terms of quality is the inventory management. So you see that Haldiram's had a lot of challenges in terms of ensuring uniformity in quality, which means they had to source the right kind of material to ensure uniformity in taste across places, because the people who bought this product bought it with a sense of trust. They believed in the product. So it was very important for them to ensure hygiene and taste and consistency right throughout. And that is where they had standardized processes as they grew as a business. So from 1937 to 2022 and even beyond, there is a lot that one can look at in terms of the Haldiram's business with regards to quality, especially. Even today, for example, whether you buy a namkeen, which is a salty product, or a sweet product, you will see that the quality is consistent. The taste is consistent. And the reason behind that is a lot of emphasis has been placed in terms of the quality of the products manufactured. So they have their own manufacturing units, and they also have a supply chain which is reliable. And each one of these people included in the supply chain is thoroughly scrutinized, and they have been given a brief about the consistency of product that goes into the manufacture of several of their products in the portfolio, because of which the quality is consistent. One of the other fascinating things which I found in this book when I read about the Agarwals and the Haldiram business is the fact that they started very, very small. So it was a business which just made sure that the family will not go empty stomach. Way back in the 1930s and 40s, or even 50s for that matter, it was a product which was good enough for the family to fill in their stomach because they earned some money. But Haldiram's Mr. Gangabhishan Agarwal was not the one to be satisfied with that. He did not look at business only from a subsistence perspective. He looked at it much beyond. He knew this business had the potential to grow. So they started small, but they always thought big. Of course, they were skeptical before they started to enter other cities, but nonetheless, they thought big. And of course, they also knew how to scale fast. So wherever they went, within a span of the first few years, they did a thorough market study, understood the tastes and preferences of the people in that locality. For example, when Haldiram started in Nagpur, they understood the taste preferences of the Maharashtrian community, because that's the state where Nagpur is located. So they understood what are the local preferences, what kind of food or snacks do people prefer in that locality, and what additionally can be brought to the taste palette of people. So having done that thorough market research, they introduced a lot of namkeen along with the bhujia, and then later followed it up with sweets. And that's how they entertained their customers, and also created a never say die attitude by going to different cities with the same kind of thorough research before they expanded. So they started small, but they always thought big, and they also knew how to scale fast. Were they always capable of scaling fast? May or may not be, but nonetheless, that was always the motive of enhancing and further expanding the business, both in terms of scope and in terms of size. Which means they also had to take calculated risk, which is another important factor that you read through this book. Now, if you look at the family of Agarwals, the early generations were not very literate. They were not highly educated. They did not have any kind of monetary support. But in spite of that, they believed in taking calculated risk. Now, there is a difference between calculated risk and blind risk. Unfortunately, we in the corporate world, the more we learn, the more we get educated, we are taught to shy away from risk. We try to keep risk at bay. Risk management is a huge thing. But what you also get to see here is that you had a bunch of people in the family who had not much clue about what can happen with this business. But nonetheless, they had a clear instinct and a belief that they had a quality product, and they had the people who were willing to work hard behind the brand and to take it really big. And therefore, they kept on taking calculated risk. Even for that matter, when they went from Bikaner to Kolkata, they were an alien city. They had no idea whether the Bengali population would accept their product there. Would it be popular? Would they be welcomed? Would they not be welcomed? But in spite of all of that, they took the risk. In fact, they didn't have the money. They didn't have the place. So every city that they went into, there was a lot of struggle and challenge. When you look at Haldirams today, you might wonder, oh, it's easy for them. They're a cash-rich business. But it wasn't the case earlier. When they started in 1930s and the later 50s, 60s, 70s, there was a lot of struggle. And each time they had to take that calculated risk to ensure that they survive as well as prosper over a period of time. So I think taking calculated risk is another important lesson that you get to read through the pages of this book. And that's another fascinating aspect that you must try to learn from this book. One more important insight that you derive from this book is the importance of branding and packaging. Now, it looks obvious today. When you talk about branding and packaging, any businessman would say, yeah, that's common sense. You got to brand your product. You got to package your product. But that was not the case in 1970s and 80s. And that also goes to show you the vision that the people in the Agarwal family had to look at the importance of branding and packaging and differentiating your product in a commoditized market, because otherwise everyone is selling bhujia. What's different about your bhujia? So what is different is the fact that the way they packaged, branded, and marketed the product. In fact, when Mr. Haldiram started the business way back in the 1930s, he called his save as Dungar Save. Now, what is Dungar Save? So Dungar was the name of the erstwhile king during those times. And therefore, when he started calling his product as Dungar Save, it immediately created fascination in the minds of customers because it was the name of the king there. And therefore, what he also told them is that my product is premium. And not just he conveyed that through the product quality, but he also commanded a better price as compared to any other seller in the market. So the positioning in the minds of people was completely transformed just by merely naming the product differently, along with the quality, of course. That was never compromised. And that continued in the 1970s, 80s, when you had a lot of Me Too products in the market, whereas you had the Haldirams, who had clearly demonstrated the need and importance of ensuring your brand entity in the market. And that's something which has stood out even today. Wherever you go, you look at the brand Haldirams, it is eye-catchy, it is different, it is not the regular off-the-mill product, it is not a Me Too product, it has differentiated itself quite successfully. Which also tells us whether you are an individual or a businessman or any other form of entity, brand matters. You've got to ensure that you make your brand both visible and you make your brand distinct, just like the Haldirams did. And today, when you go to different localities, different cities, you can see that the Haldirams is an eye-catchy brand. In fact, the business of Haldiram is greater than McDonald's and Domino's put together. That's huge, isn't it? So when we talk about an iconic Indian brand, the reason we call it iconic is because the brand positioning has been done very, very smartly, and it has only enhanced and progressed in the right direction over the years. So that is something very fascinating that you also get to read in this book. Okay, so look at other marketing fundas as well. These are only a few examples that I'm sharing here, but there are other marketing fundas which have been shared in the course of this book. Now, is everything great, everything okay, everything hunky-dory with any business? Perhaps that will never, ever happen. So this being a family business, you also had a lot of challenges, and that is something which you get to learn. I had no clue about this before I started reading this book, but what you also get to see is that the family went through a lot of ups and downs, not just once or twice, but at multiple occasions. And therefore, if you recollect the earlier family tree that I showed you, which talks about the bifurcation of business amongst different people in the family, different brothers in the family, where it all started is because of family disputes. In fact, the earlier dispute meant that Ganga Bhushan Agarwal and his wife would split from the family to start their own business and then grow it. And then again, there would be further splits in the family. So that is something that you also get to learn and understand here. Now, this is not to say that it's bad or this should not happen. Perhaps there will be family disputes. We all have family disputes in some way or the other. But what you also get to learn is the impact of those disputes on the business that you're running. And that is also something that perhaps Haldirams as a business entity went through. They had a lot of shocks because of the internal disputes, because of further bifurcation of business. And in some cases, it also got into court cases and whatnot. So there were legal hassles. There were a lot of things that went ahead because of which these family disputes, these quarrels and conflicts within the family kind of grew over time. Now, did anyone want it deliberately? Not at all. But what it tells us is a couple of key pointers, is that for any family business or any family run business that we have, or even otherwise, there has to be a clear succession plan. Now, if you do not have a clear succession plan, it's likely that the quarrels and disputes might grow over time, and they would definitely be detrimental to the business. Now, again, there are researchers who suggest that the split of business actually augured well for the Haldirams. And there are people who think that maybe if the family hadn't split, they would have gone maybe 10, 20 times more. So there are different school of thoughts existing here. But what I'm trying to share with you all is that whatever businesses you run, especially when you see the business growing, it's important to have a succession plan in place. It's important to know who will take over the reins of this business once the initial founders make way. And that's an important and a very critical aspect of any family-run business that you have. Also, it's important to ensure the clarity of roles within the business. Who is going to do what? Because sometimes we tend to believe that the person who sits at the counter is doing nothing. The person who is sweating inside the kitchen is doing all the hard work, which may or may not be true. But you've got to be able to segregate responsibilities, and there has to be complete role clarity. And that is another insight that you get from the book, is that the fact that you need to have role clarity, you need to have succession planning. And of course, one good thing about what happened here is that although there were family disputes and conflicts and quarrel, a lot of business distribution happened really amicably, and we don't read about that much often. In fact, even during distribution of business, there is a lot of quarrels that tend to happen in families, but a lot of this happened quite amicably. Of course, later on, it kind of aggravated, because of which you see court cases being filed against each other, people fighting for the brand name, people fighting for different stuff. But some of this could have been avoidable, some of this could not have been avoidable. But nonetheless, I think a proper succession plan is something that we tend to learn the importance of that, especially in today's complicated world where relationships can be a bit dicey and can have a detrimental impact on the business that you're running. So all in all, these are some of the key learnings or insights that you get from this book, which I think is fascinating, and you'll get more insights when you read it for yourself. So that is something that you should definitely try and practice. So the next question might be, who should read this book? Well, everyone should read this book, but specifically, who will this book help a lot more than the rest? So if you're a business enthusiast, if you're someone who like to learn about case studies and how businesses grow, how businesses make mistakes and learn from that, and how do they prosper, then you must definitely pick this book up and read it. Although it is a few years older now, but nonetheless, the context is fresh. Haldiram's is a business which is now in here, so you would love to read this book. You can also read this book if you're a storyteller, because a lot of stories are inherent in this book. The story of how Haldiram started the business, the story of how they went from one city to another city, the story of the family dispute, the story of how they did their marketing campaigns. All of that is very fascinating. So if you're a storyteller, especially if you're someone who loves to tell business stories, then of course, this is a great book for you to read. You can also read this book if you are a management faculty or a business faculty, or you're a business student who loves to learn about businesses. You should definitely read that book in that sense. Also, if you're a corporate professional and part of any business, or you're a training facilitator, then in that case, you can surely read this book, because it will give you a lot of examples which you might be able to share with your teams, with your audiences, and can also give them some really fascinating insights. So in that context as well, this is a powerful, powerful book. But last but not the least, if you're a family-owned business, then I would strongly recommend this book to you. If you are part of any family business, even if you own a small retail family business or a stationery store or a sweet mart store or anything for that nature, then this book is for you, because it just tells you the importance of how family businesses can be grown, and what are the things that you need to avoid or check or have in place. Okay, so ideally, this book is meant for anyone and everyone, but these 5 categories of people, I would definitely say you can enjoy this book a lot more than others who are just reading it for fun. So try and read this book. A lot of praise has been heaped on this book over the years, and this directly comes from the pages of the book itself. So Open says, details both feuds and jealousies and the business acumen and expertise of family. And in another praise by the Hindu, they say it's a savory narrative, an inspirational chronicle of a homegrown family business laced with extra strong masala flavor. So what I'm trying to suggest is I'm not the only one praising the book. There are others who believe likewise. So all in all, a good book for you to read, a fascinating read about business, about family-run businesses, about marketing, inventory management, and most importantly, a book about an iconic Indian brand that has grown global. So it is a book that will give you a lot of these insights and much more. So don't just trust my word. You might want to pick up this book and start reading it, just in excess of 200 pages. So it's a good book for you to pick up and start reading. That's all from my side. I believe what we have shared here today has given you some insights. So do pick up this book and do let me know your thoughts and how this book has helped you. Thank you so much.